When was the last time you shared a meal that felt not just nourishing to your body, but also to your spirit? Even the simplest act of eating with someone else, whether it's around the kitchen table or on a video call, can change how we experience food. The conversation, the laughter, the reactions, even just the rhythm of eating at the same pace. It helps to regulate stress, improve digestion, and bring back a sense of calm connection. Hey everyone, I wanted to pop in really quickly because one, I was really excited to film this session because it lives at the intersection of food, wellness, and community, and also because it addresses something that could be a simple way, particularly for people with chronic illness, to find gradual ways to start feeling better. That said, I am also someone who lives and experiences chronic illness and chronic pain, and in watching this back, I can tell. So what I would recommend is I recommend for the parts that aren't a reflection or a reset exercise to speed it up to 1.5. Welcome back to the Grounding Hour. Today we're talking about what happens when we eat together, why it matters, what science says about it, and how we can rebuild that sense of shared nourishment in our everyday lives. Humans are wired to gather around food. In fact, our physiology responds differently when we eat together. Eating in company increases oxytocin and serotonin. Now, you may have heard of these before, and it's for good reason. These hormones are tied to calm and connection. You may have heard them referenced in other situations. So for instance, there are studies that show when people hug, there's a release of oxytocin in their bodies. Some people even call it the happy hormone. Eating together also helps to lower cortisol. This is helpful because it helps to support digestion and to reduce stress. Studies also show that shared meals also tend to be more balanced. This is one of the main reasons that there's typically a pretty strong recommendation for parents to eat meals with their children because it helps them to develop stronger eating habits earlier on. People who eat communally actually report stronger social ties, lower chronic inflammation markers over time, and higher diet quality. What's great about eating communally is that it is kind of a rare thing in that it can help to improve both your mental and physical health, but it doesn't require a significant, in most instances, change in your overall lifestyle, in the sense that it's relatively accessible for many people to be able to experience eating communally. Food has always been a form of community care, whether you're in the Caribbean, in Asia, just even in the South here in the US, people gather around food, and for years and years and years, there are historical contexts around the ways in which and reasons in which people gather around food. Whether it's your Sunday lunch in Trinidad and you're gathering around a pot of stewed chicken, and it's almost like a reunion where you gather and talk about what's going on. You might have some rice, some kalaloo. These types of dishes represent love, labor, legacy, but all shared from one pot. In other parts of the world, like Japan, they have concepts around food and eating communally and how you should eat. Ichiju Sansai is a philosophy around food in Japan. Literally, it translates to one soup, 3 vegetables, but really it's a philosophy around how you build your plate so that you can have a nourishing and balanced meal. And what's great is that it's a very simple phrase that's easy to remember, and everyone learns this. So it's not just like one thing someone does, but it's a philosophy you grow up understanding and learning in terms of how you eat. This philosophy reminds families to eat slowly and together. And what I think is really beautiful about it is that it values balance and nourishment. I mean, even growing up in the South, Sunday dinners were still a thing, and they were a place of storytelling, healing, catching up, laughing, joking, and just breaking bread together. Across cultures, communal eating isn't just about food, it's about belonging. And it's how we remind each other that we're still connected no matter how different our lives look now. So whether it's a random dinner catch up with your friends, a video call with your family to enjoy a meal, it really doesn't matter. And it's actually quite beautiful that we've been able to evolve and find new ways to connect regardless of distance. What's important is that you still get the experience of communal eating. Long before functional foods became a wellness buzzword, food itself was functional by design. Every culture had its healing recipes. Turmeric and ginger in soups and tea, garlic and greens in stews, fermented foods and broths designed to support immunity. And often these foods weren't meant to be consumed alone. They were made for family, a pot that everybody shared, or a tonic brewed for the entire village. Now, when we separate those foods from their context, turning them into pills, powders, supplements, we kept the nutrients but lost the ritual and thus the sense of community that was tied to it. That is not to say that you can't achieve similar things with these new formats. However, it is to say that the concept of doing these things communally was definitely lost in the translation of making these ideas, ingredients, concepts, nutrients accessible to people in a different way. And in the end, we lost the community that really made them consistent and meaningful. And this is really important because one of the key ways to see benefits, particularly from functional ingredients, is by using them consistently over time. And I have to say, having a pot of soup, a nice stew, a warm cup of something every night with family is much more enjoyable than popping a pill. That's why shared meals still matter. They're a huge part of nutrition. With them comes things like support, consistency, joy. It makes a lot of things honestly feel less like chores. We've talked a lot about what are the benefits of eating communally, what are some ways in which people have eaten communally historically, and how that has translated into life today. This would be a really great time for us to take a reset break. If you're in a space where it's possible, I would love for you to pause for a moment, close your eyes, and take a deep breath in, followed by a long breath out. Now, I want you, with your eyes still closed, I want you to imagine a table. It might be from your childhood, it might be from last week, and it might even be one you're yet to sit at. Picture the light, the people, the sounds of utensils, the laughter. Notice what this memory feels like in your body. It could be warm, it could be safety. As you envision this table, think about the people who are around it, whether it's one person, whether it's a screen with a few people on the other end. You don't need a big crowd. Think about what that shared moment feels like. Even one shared moment like this can remind you that you're not alone at the table. Now that you've had a chance to envision what that feels like and what that experience was for you, I want you to hold on to that thought. We're going to revisit it later as we do our guided journaling session. But right now, I just wanted to stoke your curiosity and get you intrigued or a bit nostalgic for what it feels like to eat in community. If you haven't already done so, take a deep breath in Deep breath. And then slowly release the air. And open your eyes. Growing up, my mom's garden taught me that nourishment starts before the meal. She'd send us outside, whether it was to pick fruits or vegetables from the garden, crack a coconut, or even one memory that's super vivid for me this week is going outside to pick mint leaves so that we could make tea. And for me, even to this day, that is a comforting feeling and sense. The smell of mint tea reminds me of those times, but also just a sense of warmth and community. Now, years later, my own child experiences the same ritual. This week alone, my mother brought me some mint leaves from her garden, and I introduced them to my child, and I let him smell them and rub them between his fingers so he can get a deeper sense of the scent. And I said, "Would you like some mint tea?" Now he's 2, he's never had mint tea, but he was curious because it piqued his curiosity. So I said, well, I have to let the kettle boil first. And he anxiously sat watching, waiting for the kettle to boil just so he could taste this new thing that he hadn't experienced. I put the tea leaves in a glass container so that he could see what happens when you pour the hot water over it. And he just watched it anxiously, waiting for his opportunity to drink it. Seeing him finally get to enjoy his cup of tea and saying, "Ooh, delicious," was a reminder for me that wellness can be inherited, even through small acts, one at a time. Whether it's gardening or community food spaces, they connect us to the source of our nourishment and not just the outcome. They also teach us patience, care, gratitude. Now, I know that not everyone has access to land or a garden or other people who garden even. And that's okay. I don't expect that everyone's going to miraculously start growing their own fruits and vegetables and feeding their entire communities immediately. However, I do believe there are ways that we can engage in commensality for today. Some examples of how people do this today might be through community gardens, farmers markets, produce boxes. A lot of these offer the same or a similar version of that shared connection to the source and to the people and community surrounding it. Right now, considering these things and getting a better understanding of them is particularly important as we see more and more food resource programs like SNAP-Ed being cut. Grassroots forms of access are critical, even if it just means you've grown some plants, you've grown some herbs on your windowsill, and you're sharing them with your neighbor or with other people in your community. At the end of the day, it's really focusing on the fact that access is critical. And if we as a community can support us in access, that's incredibly empowering for all of us. Food and commensality teach us that wellness is not just an individual act, but a collective one. And a garden is more than a source of food. It's a quiet act of community care. As we think about what the connection is between food and community care, let's take a minute to dive into our guided journaling session. Here you'll have an opportunity to really reflect on what communal eating looks like and feels like for you now and or in the past, and what that might look like for you in the future in terms of participating in more community care and care for yourself. Let's dive in. You can take a moment to reflect, or you can write these down. If you can, you'll have about 3 minutes to reflect on each question. If you don't need that amount of time, feel free to skip ahead to the next question, but we will block in 3 minutes for each one. Think of a time when you felt connected while sharing a meal. What emotions or sensations come up? Who do you most enjoy eating with and why? What barriers make it hard to share meals now? And what's one realistic way to rebuild that connection? your food comes from, and gratitude for the people or places that make it possible. What form of commensality or eating in community would I enjoy the most? When and how will I have my next meal in community? Now that you've had a chance to reflect on what commensality looks like for you and how you can re-engage, if necessary, in eating in community, let's talk about a few ways in which you can do this if you feel like you might need a bit more support. Here are some examples of action steps you can take to recultivate your connections. A great way to start out is just with one step. So let's say one meal at a time. You can say, this week I want to have one shared meal. It could be with a friend, a coworker, a family member, and you can invite them to eat with you this week, and it can be in person or it can be virtual. The idea is just to make it happen. Another way to recultivate your connection is in remembering your past. Think about a cultural ritual or tradition that you may have practiced earlier in life, growing up, or with family. Revisit that tradition from your heritage and share it with a friend, a family member, a coworker, whoever you choose. Another way to recultivate your connection is by finding a community table. Now, there are some that are literally this, where anyone in the community could come sit at the table, but you don't have to think about it in such a formal context. You can totally simplify this. Instead of eating at home alone, I am going to go out to my local cafe. You can also do things like co-working lunches if you're busy, or you can research to see if there are any community meal events near you. Another way to recultivate that connection is to grow or share something. And I intentionally say grow or share because not everybody has the access, means, ability, or whatnot to share, to grow things. But just because you didn't grow it doesn't mean you can't share it. Some ways to do this would be to plant an herb or something. You can plant an herb, grow a tomato tree. You can join a community garden. You could even just participate in one day that supports a community garden. Or you could do something as simple as a meal swap with a neighbor. Or if you're a little finicky about things like that, you can do an ingredient swap with a neighbor. The point is this: connection often begins even with a single step. And in this case, it can be a single seed that you have planted. I hope that coming out of this discussion has reignited an interest in eating in community and has offered a reminder that eating together is more than just the benefit of, when we share a meal, we share regulation, rhythm, resilience, and those are just some of the things. So if you find yourself struggling with things, whether it's loneliness or just struggling to build better habits, consider having a meal with someone, particularly if it's an environment where you feel that they understand and support your overall wellness. Eating together is an ancient act of wellness that, if we embrace it more today, we can help our entire communities to feel and be well. Thank you for joining the Gwell Grounding Hour today. I hope you've left yourself the entire hour block and you've got some time left to reflect, enjoy a warm cup of tea, relax, whatever it is you need right now. If you're a Bloom Plus member, don't forget to head over to our site where you can download the session worksheet and the next steps guide. As always, thanks again for joining us today. I'll see you in the next session. Until then, keep coming back.